Good afternoon and welcome everyone, and welcome to today's Connect event, which is all about an introduction to Devon Highways Department. My name's Cara Stobart. I am the County Officer for the Devon Association of Local Councils, and I'm really delighted to be hosting today's event, and it's wonderful to see so many people here as well. So it's really reflecting the importance of this topic at this time, and I think we are expecting somewhere in the region of 130 participants and nearly 90 councils to be participating. So thank you everyone for coming along. Today's event is a pivotal opportunity for all of us. As many of you know, the quality of our roads and highways is a subject of frequent discussion and concern in our communities. Our members have been very vocal to DALC about the challenges that they're experiencing on the ground. And whilst it's clear that some areas are enjoying really robust and positive interactions with Devon County Council's highways team, it does appear that others have frustrations and perceive obstacles, and that's obviously not as good. And we would hope to have there to be a consistent level of satisfaction across the county. So our goal today is to not only provide you with a greater understanding of the Highways Department itself and the various roles it performs, but also to try and bridge any gaps there may be in communication and understanding that might exist, because DALC firmly believes in the importance of fostering stronger and more positive relationships between towns, parishes and our principal councils. So it's really essential that we work well with the highways team for effective local governments, effective services and ultimately community satisfactions in our highways infrastructure. So I'm really delighted today to be welcoming a range of speakers. We've got a range of Devon County officers with us today. So we've got, first I'll introduce you to Rob Richards. Rob, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hi Cara. Hello everyone. Rob Richards, I'm Deputy Director for Highway Infrastructure Development.
Thanks, Rob. And we've got Ian James.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Ian James. I'm the Highways and Traffic Management Group Manager at Devon County Council.
Thanks, Ian. And we've got Tom.
Good afternoon. I'm the Neighbourhood Highways Manager covering the eastern side of the county, so effectively North Devon, East Devon, Exeter and Mid Devon.
Thanks, Tom. And we have John.
Thanks, Cara. My name's John Fewings. I do a similar role to Tom, but I cover the south and west of the county. So I cover the Teignbridge, South Hams, Torridge and West Devon areas. Thanks.
Thanks, John. So everyone is here today very much here to share the details of what they do in their departments and their various roles, but also with this shared commitment to wanting to work positively with parish and town councils as well. And I want to thank all the officers for giving up their time for being here today and for that commitment that we all share. As we move through today's agenda, I really want to encourage all participants to engage actively, to listen attentively and to ask questions. Later in the session, we are going to have an opportunity for some breakout groups where you'll have a chance to discuss and share your own council's experiences of working with the highways team, but also to discuss and provide some constructive feedback and also to reflect on all of our respective roles and abilities to enhance the relationship between ourselves and the department. So I really want to emphasize as well at this point that today is not a one-off event. It's part of an ongoing conversation, and your insights and experience in it is shared today or later in the feedback form that we're going to share with you is going to help shape the future events that we've got lined up, but also DALC's ongoing work and conversations we're having with the department to help enhance the relationships between you all. So our aim today is very much about being constructive and helpful. Unfortunately, we were not going to be able to discuss very local highways matters in your localities, but hopefully you'll leave today with greater clarity as to where you can raise those matters, where they can be directed and who you can direct them to. And you'll also have an opportunity in our survey later to highlight any other issues that you want to bring to our attention, which we can hopefully incorporate into future events. Now, I want to say, right from the get-go, I understand there's going to be a range of feelings in the room regarding highways matters and how they are being or have been managed in the past. Can I please remind all participants to treat each other with civility and respect at all times? Please respect our speakers when they're talking. Questions, we will have opportunities for questions. We're going to do questions at the end of the presentation, and at that point I'll invite you to either use the raise hand function or to type your question in the chat, and we'll take it in turn to answer those questions. There may be some questions that we can't answer today, or some questions that might be more appropriate for one of the future sessions that we have lined up. And also, just as a general housekeeping, please can you keep your microphones on mute just to prevent background noise whilst our speakers are talking. This event is being recorded, and the recording and the presentation slides will be shared with all of our member councils in one of our weekly e-bulletins as soon as they're available. But before I sort of risk having speaking too much from the get-go, please can I just thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for giving up your time to try and better understand the department and its roles and responsibilities, and also for your commitment to wanting to try and strive towards building stronger relationships with the department. I'm really looking forward to a productive and insightful session. Thank you. So now I'm going to hand over to Rob, who's going to lead us through some presentation slides. Over to you, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Cara. If we just go on to the next slide, I'll just give an overview of the agenda for today. So I'm going to give a bit of introduction. We've got a list of what the future kind of planned events are. This is the first of a series, an ongoing series. Talk a little bit about the context of what we're trying to manage as a service. We'll touch on what we're seeing out there from a highway kind of network condition, and just give an overview of the structure to try and give everyone on the call a kind of understanding of how we're structured to know where the kind of points of contact are. Talk a bit about our Neighbourhood Highways Officers and their relationship with parish and town councils, and then the best way to make contact with highways. So if we go to the next slide, Cara. So whilst, so Ian, do you want to just run through this list of future events?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Rob. Okay. So it's great to see so many people on the call today. So we've worked hard with Cara over the past few months to create a list of future Connect events on subjects we feel will be of most interest to towns and parishes. So the current run of webinars are at a frequency of every 2 months, but they're planned to be every 3 to 4 months after this initial period. We're really keen to hear ideas of future topics, so please communicate these to Cara, and we can discuss them with Cara in the regular liaison meetings that we have with Devon County Council and DALC. So as Cara said, all these events will be recorded, so if you're unable to attend any, you can catch up at leisure at your own convenience. So the next Connect event after today is on the 15th of August, and this is entitled An Introduction to Self-Help Highways. So this session will spotlight 4 initiatives which we have at Devon County Council. The Road Warden Scheme, which empowers town and parish councils to get involved with minor works on the highway. So this includes tasks such as pothole repairs that do not meet our intervention criteria, weed clearance, sign clearance, and grass cutting, to name a few. So attendees will discover how this scheme facilitates the swift and efficient execution of essential tasks, ensuring that the upkeep and enhancement of our local road networks. So next initiative at that Connect event will be the community self-help, something we've introduced recently. So this will be an explanation of the new community self-help scheme, which enables town and parish councils to deliver infrastructure improvements themselves. We'll discuss the Parish Pass Partnership. So this is currently a really popular scheme which enables town and parish councils to obtain a grant to maintain the public rights of way in their community, working in partnership with the support of our public rights of way team. And finally, at that Connect session, we will talk about the Snow Warden Scheme. Again, this is a really popular scheme which many towns and parishes have signed up to, which enables yourselves to carry out minor winter treatments in your community. As we move towards autumn, the next event scheduled is on the 18th of October, titled Understanding Road Maintenance. So we'll be joined by our asset management team, and we'll give a deep dive into our asset management approach. We'll give an overview of Devon Road's condition, the maintenance solutions we choose, and why we choose these solutions, whether this is resurfacing, surface dressing, patching, or other techniques, and an explanation as to what that actually means. So this event is timed to coincide with the start of winter period, where due to weather conditions, we always see an increase in potholes. So this event will include an explanation of our highway safety policy, and will focus on how we assess, how we categorise, and how we repair potholes. As we approach the winter season, the following event will be the 5th of December, and this is titled An Insight into Roadworks. So this event will focus on types of roadworks which will take place across our network, including street works, noticing that is carried out through our permit scheme, the network enforcement that we carry out, road closures and traffic controls and how we go about managing those and granting those. We'll address the challenges that we face accommodating the number of requests for occupation of the highway. We'll also discuss how alongside planned works, we have to accommodate emergency works on the highways from ourselves and statutory undertakers. As we enter the new year on the 6th of February, the next event will be Highway Investment Unveiled. So at this event, we plan to give you a better understanding of how investment decisions are made by ourselves at Devon County Council. So information on where our funding comes from and a check-in on how far that funding actually goes. So we'll discuss the rising backlog of works locally and nationally and how this causes challenges for all of us, but focus on how we are addressing this. The final session currently planned, obviously there will be more following this and from your feedback, is on the 3rd of April next year, entitled Highways and the Planning System. So we'll be joined by colleagues from the development management team who will give us an insight into how the highway fits into the planning system, including new developments, how they're accommodated, and linking to government policies on growth. Okay, back to yourself, Rob.
So, Cara, could you just go back a slide? That'd be useful. Yeah, okay, thank you. So whilst today is primarily about the relationship between the highway service through the neighbourhood into parish and town councils, I thought it was just important just to really thank Cara for helping to establish this series of events. I think as a highway service, I'd be the first to say that in recent years we haven't engaged with parish and town councils as well as we would have hoped to. There's a number of reasons for that. I think as a service, we've really struggled post-COVID, not really due to COVID, but just in these intervening years. We've had a couple of really difficult winters, which I'll touch on in a minute, but we've had a lack of staff. We've had really erratic funding coming forward from the DFT, which has put pressures on us at different times of year. And of course, we've had some really poor road conditions out there that has put a huge amount of pressure on everyone within the service, primarily through the frustration that everyone's feeling. So just that lack of capacity has meant we've really struggled to arrange for parish and town council conferences that we used to have on an annual basis. We just haven't had the people available to do that. So I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is I think almost subconsciously, as a service, we have experienced a really high level of abuse, particularly through social media. I would expect as parish and town councillors that you've experienced this as well. And the idea of putting officers in front of people is something that's been concerning. We've had threats of physical violence. We've had people on social media asking if they know where officers live because they want to go and, to use their words, sort them out. We've had, particularly in our parking enforcement team, we've had a number of officers hospitalised. We're waiting currently for sentencing on an assault that's happened. So I think that's all just led into us losing sight of the real value. And I think, again, I think conversations we've had with Cara really helped us realise the value and what we've been missing through the strength of this as a service. I know it happens at a neighbourhood level, but actually as a service, that relationship and the value we take for it. So as you see, this is the start, hopefully, of a series, and we will be listening to your feedback as to how we shape these in the future. And I think just I was going to talk a little bit about network condition as well. I think, but before I do that, Ian, if you just talk about the network, just to give a bit more context.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So as this is our first event, I think it's useful to give you that insight into how big our highway network is. So we are a large rural authority. We're bound north and south by coastline. As the highway authority, we are responsible for the highway maintainable at public expense. So that's often referred to as HMPE. So in Devon, this consists of 12,900 kilometres of road, so around 8,000 miles of road. Now, compared to other authorities, this is approximately a third more than the next highest highway authority for length of road in England. Our network's made up 5% of our roads are classified as A roads, and they're intended to provide large-scale transport links between areas. It is noted that some of our A roads are single lane, which reflects the county that we're in, reflects the rural capacity of that. 8% are classified as B roads, intended to connect areas and feed traffic between A roads. 35% are classified as C roads, so generally smaller roads, and these are intended to connect unclassified roads with A and B roads, often linking housing estates or towns or villages to the rest of the network. So this leaves 52% as unclassified, which is a large proportion on our network, so around 4,000 miles. Many, but not all, resemble the picture on the slide you see in front of you. A typical Devon road, unclassified, with grass down the middle on there. And unclassified roads are best described as local roads intended for local traffic. So we have 3,000 kilometres of footpath for footways, the majority of these being in high urban areas such as Barnstaple, Newton Abbot, Exeter and Exmouth, but also in the centre of all our towns and parishes. We have 2,500 kilometres of cycleways. So these are either adjacent to the carriageway or off-road. So routes such as the coast to coast are excellent facilities and attractions for residents and tourists. So we have a large public rights of way network, so 500 kilometres of public rights of way. Again, this reflects, the size of it reflects our rural location, but these also offer really great recreational facilities, either as the public footpaths or bridleways. The Southwest Coast Path is included in this, which draws a lot of tourists in, and a lot of leisure facilities for residents of Devon. So bridges, 3,000 bridges. Again, we have the largest bridge estate of any highway authority in England. It's about 3,200 bridges. So we have a really varied estate, including opening bridges such as Shaldon Bridge and the Baskill Bridge in Exeter. We have many historical listed bridges and a large amount of traditional clapper bridges across Devon, included in that figure. The biggest threat that we see to our bridge estate is the amount, and Rob will talk about the road condition in the future, is the amount of water passing beneath them now due to the effect of climate change, which causes scour to the foundations. Also included in our asset, we have about 200,000 gullies, about 250,000 signs, 6 park and ride sites. There's also 400 separate traffic installations across the whole network. So half of these, about 200, are the push button crossings, with the other half being junction installations, which could be a simple signalised T-junction or a larger signalised roundabout or junction. So all of these traffic signal assets are now converted to LED, so they're running on reducing carbon for us and ongoing costs for the residents of Devon. And finally, we have 80,000 streetlights across the county. So we've converted virtually all of these now to LED, which saves a huge amount of carbon again and a huge cost for the residents of Devon. We are in the process also of converting our streetlights to a central management system. So this gives us the ability then to remotely control all the traffic lights, to turn them on and off at different times and dim them. So it's something that's going to help us prepare for the future if we want to carry out any particular changes. Okay, hand back to yourself, Rob.
Thanks, Ian. Before we get into the main part of the presentation, I just wanted to touch on really the kind of frustrations that we all share with the network condition at the moment. We've had 2 really difficult winters for the service, and I think what worries me the most is the weather we've had has not really been exceptional. If you think about 22, 23, so last winter, not the most recent one, we had a cold snap in kind of late November, ran through to Christmas time, and we saw a really rapid deterioration of the network. Lots of potholes appeared. This winter just gone was very different, but it was very wet. We spread far less grit and salt than we normally do, but we had 2 to 3 times the average rainfall across the south of the country. and we had 11 named storms. And I think both those winters, whilst they were different, they had the same kind of outcome in a real rapid deterioration. And I think it just highlights the fragility of the assets that we're trying to look after and the lack of resilience that we have, which to me comes from what is now decades of underinvestment. As an organisation, what we have been doing is to lobby our MPs and try to get them to understand the impacts of this underinvestment and the fragility that we're seeing, the lack of resilience. You know, there was a consultation out from the Department of Transport about adaptation. It's difficult to adapt when you don't even have the resilience of the current climates that we're dealing with. If you get opportunity, if you look at the alarm surveys, if you Google the alarm survey, you will see that this is a national problem. So the backlog of roadworks is currently reached 14 billion nationally. That's gone up 2 billion in 12 months. We think our backlog in Devon, we've estimated it to be £200 million. Off the back of the lobbying we've done, and it's not just us, but other highway authorities, we're pleased that the DfT announced an additional 8 billion of funding following the abandonment of HS2. So that was announced, I think, back in October, November. We've been promised from the Department of Transport an additional 208 million over the next 10 years. What we don't have at this stage is any details of when that funding is going to come forward. So is that going to be 20 million a year, or is that going to be front-loaded, or is that going to be back-loaded? We don't know. Also, the DCC themselves have been able to allocate an additional 10 million of capital funding following the agreement with the safety valve, which is about special educational needs and disabilities. So by striking that deal with government, it's allowed 10 million to be put into highways. Of that, the promises from the DfT, like I said, we've not seen details of the 200 million. We've had 6 million last financial year. We had 6 million this financial year. Details of how we're spending that are all on our website under funding and priorities under highways. But I just wanted to pick that up. In one of the future webinars, we'll talk more about funding and about maintenance works and how we choose maintenance techniques, etc. But I thought it would be strange for us to start this series without at least touching on that, because I know it's a frustration to all road users out there. It's a frustration to the whole service. But I wanted to give you an idea of the work that we are doing. Cara, could we go into the next slide, please? Just quickly, we'll run through structure so you can get an idea of who we are and where we sit in the organisation. So Meg Booth is a Director of Climate Change, Environment and Transport. And then I report to her as Deputy Director. So my area, I cover, there's 2 chief engineers that report to me that make up our engineering design group. And those guys are delivering the new capital funded scheme. So things like North Devon Link Road, we've done Tiverton EUE, they also build recycling centres and deliver all sorts of capital schemes for us. Got development management that are responding to Highways Matters from planning applications. That will be a topic of a future presentation. And then you'll see Ian there, who heads up Highways and Traffic Management Group. So if you go to the next slide, Cara, you'll see that beneath Ian, we've got the Traffic Management Group Manager. So he's looking at the kind of movement of traffic, looking at the kind of operational aspects of the network. We've got an asset management team. Those are the guys that are going out, looking at how we invest that capital money. We've got a performance manager who's looking at a kind of business management side of the organisation. And then really the subject of today's webinar, we've got our 2 neighbourhood highway managers that make up the neighbourhood team. So I'm going to hand you over. I'm not sure who's starting first, if it's Tom or John, but I'll hand you over to explain a bit more about the neighbourhood group and their relationship with you guys in the parish and town councils.
Yeah, so it's me, Rob. So Yep, thank you for that, Rob. I introduced myself earlier. I'm John Fewings. I'm in our Ivy Bridge depot today, so I apologise for any background noise or interruptions during the talk. I want to talk first about the primary point of contact. So we have, within our structure, we have 6 neighbourhood teams, which broadly match the district council boundaries. Each team is based in their respective area and is led by a neighbourhood highways engineer. And typically within each team, there's a technician who deals with special events and traffic orders. And we have between 4 and 7 neighbourhood officers, depending on the number of elected county members in that area. So the neighbourhood officers and neighbourhood system is broadly aligned so that each neighbourhood officer has 2 county electoral divisions, although in some cases it may be 1 or 3, depending on the local circumstances. So, for example, in the Teambridge team, we have 1 neighbourhood officer who looks after 3 urban electoral divisions and 1 who looks after 1 rural electoral division. And this is because urban areas tend to have fewer maintenance issues than in rural areas.
John, can I just interrupt? Your camera's not on. I'm not sure if.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure. I couldn't see on when I was sharing earlier. I couldn't see anyone's camera. Yep. So okay, should be on now. Sorry. So where did I get to? The neighbourhood officers are the primary point of contact for all highways related issues for their elected members and for any of the parish and town clerks in those areas. And it's not always possible to respond straight away to issues that are raised. Our officers spend a lot of time out on the office and out on the network trying to resolve issues. They're not always in the office, but we do aim to respond to any queries as quickly as we can. We prefer it if any contact with the neighbourhood officer is made through the parish or town clerks, and there's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, so that we have 1 point of contact for each local council. Also, so that we can be reasonably sure that any issues that are being raised by the respective council as a whole and aren't the opinions of individual members. It also helps to verify that email is genuine, and it makes it easier for us to track and follow up issues at a later date. So, for example, if we receive an email from Councillor Jane Smith 167@gmail.com, we can't be sure if that's a genuine member of the parish council or that's a fictitious account. Whereas if we get one that comes from the parish clerk, they're much easier to verify whether that's a real account or not. We're also increasingly seeing members of the public being copied into emails, and this raises data protection issues when individual email addresses are shared. So I've recently had a complaint when I responded to an email that a member of the public was copied into, and they complained that the issue was nothing to do with them and they didn't want to be involved in any conversations. It's worth at this point just briefly talking about the HATOCs as well. So we have 8 highways and traffic orders committees in Devon, 1 for each district and for the city council areas that we represent. These are joint committees with the county members and representatives from the district councils. And these are set up to approve traffic orders and local schemes, which currently they're allowed to approve schemes up to £250,000 in value. So another thing that the neighbourhood officers do is they resolve local issues, and there's some examples here. I'm just going to run through each of those. You can also raise issues and report them on our report problem page, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later. But if there are any problems that can't or haven't been resolved by the report problem route, then the clerk can contact the Neighbourhood Highways Officer, and each clerk should know who their Neighbourhood Highways Officer is. So I'm just going to run through some of the examples on the screen. Firstly, maintenance. So this includes any issues with the carriageway, so commonly where we have potholes or deterioration of the road service. And I'll take you through an example of how to report that a little bit later. It also includes issues such as vegetation. So where overgrown vegetation is on private land, such as trees or bushes overhanging the highway, it's normally a landowner's responsibility to deal with that. If it's raised as a safety issue, we normally contact a landowner and ask them to cut the vegetation back. If the issue is on a Devon verge or is on Devon land, we would ultimately be responsible for that. And through our contractor or our agencies, we cut the grass normally 2 or 3 times a year. we normally cut back on our verges where there's a visibility issue, typically at junctions on inside of bends. Street cleaning and sweeping is predominantly district council responsibility, but we do clean the roads when there's a build-up of debris or if there's a safety issue. I'm just going to talk now about engineering, and this includes issues where there's a more major problem on the road, for example, where there's a landslide or substance. In such cases, we may need to close a road while we work out what the cause is and we try and find a solution. It also includes drainage issues. It's worth noting that generally landowners are responsible for drainage ditches alongside the road and for any drainage systems on or under their land, unless there's another agreement in place. The third subject on the slide is statutory issues, and this covers the legal aspects of the work that we do, such as setting speed limits and controls over parking on the highway. It's worth noting we work very closely with the police on setting speed limits, and important that we're consistent, not just across the county, but also nationally, so that drivers know what to expect. And for parking restrictions, we have an annual review process where local county members can request parking restrictions. These are then reviewed by the local HATOC before being advertised. And if there are any objections, these can then be brought back to the HATOC for consideration. The final subject is the legal aspect of the work that we do, predominantly land ownership. And this is an area that does take up quite a lot of time. Records of ownership are often not as clear as you might think they are. I'm just going to run through two potential scenarios. So when a wall collapses onto a highway, there's often disagreement regarding who it belongs to. Because the scale of land charges to land registry maps and the scale of title deeds, it's not always easy to determine exactly where a boundary lies. And this is compounded in rural areas where there are very often few features to help. Very often the wall is the responsibility of the adjacent landowner, but for obvious reasons, people don't always want to take on the cost and responsibility of issues like this. In some cases, people assume that a piece of land is theirs and they may incorporate into a building or garden or a parking area. This normally comes to light when there are complaints from neighbours or local highway users. And they're often the same issues as highlighted in the previous example of pinpointing exactly where the boundary is. Often this interpretation relies on what the county council has maintained, repaired or resurfaced in the past. There are a surprising number of small pockets of land that have never been registered or may have been owned by companies, developers or landowners that no longer exist or may lie between boundaries. And these are often quite difficult and take a long time to resolve. So in summary, all of these issues are ones that your NHO should be looking at in the first instance, but they can then hand them over to other specialist teams if needed. I'll now hand you over to Tom Vaughan, my colleague from the north and east of the county, to talk about other aspects of the NHO role. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Cara, if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. I was going to look a little bit more detail at some of the areas that we cover, and the first one of which is scouting following major incidents. And this is perhaps some of our more high-profile, well-valued work that we undertake. Following those major incidents that, as Rob was referring to earlier, there's been a number of named storms over the past year that we're all too familiar with now, which leave in their wake quite some significant damage. A lot of that's reported and clear and obvious on the network when it first occurs. Some of it is in the more minor network where it perhaps doesn't get reported so swiftly, and we go out looking to understand what the damage has been, what's occurred, and what's required to actually put that right. But during the incident itself, this actually requires a lot of work with the other local agencies, such as district councils, the Environment Agency, and the Fire Brigade, during the incident to actually understand, firstly, what our responsibilities are in the short term, and more importantly, what support we can actually provide to those agencies whilst we're dealing with the incidents themselves on the ground. That requires our officers to have a really good understanding of our available resource and capacity to actually provide that support. And importantly, to have empathy and sympathy with those who are directly affected by the incident themselves. It's a time of real distress for them, and they will be having that direct communication with our officers during that period of real distress. So as we move away from those incidents, there's obviously that need to provide that knowledge and support to those affected communities to help them clean and build their way out of those situations. And well, unfortunately, really our experience of how to deal with that is increasing significantly over the past few years. And some of the feedback we get is greatly appreciated on the support that we actually give during those situations. we undertake the local condition surveys. Now, we mentioned the COVID situation earlier, and one of the more positive aspects of that situation was that we were receiving less inquiries over that period. So we took the opportunity for our local officers to get a really good understanding of their local network, understand what the condition was, and undertake some surveys of that. Now, these are visual surveys. They're slightly different to the machine survey that you'll probably be learning about when our asset management team speak to you in the coming months in their future presentation. But these are surveys undertaken using the officer's knowledge and experience and understanding what the condition of the network is at those locations. And we record that and we map it, and we're able to use that for those future conversations. We keep those surveys updated by when we undertake regular site visits, responding to inquiries from the public or yourselves as parish and town councils. And then where some areas are perhaps less visited, we undertake planned resurveys of those locations, because that gives us a real good understanding of the rate of deterioration of the network at those locations. And I think importantly, what it does, it provides us a real focus. Rob mentioned earlier some of the additional funding we've received over the past year. It's greatly appreciated, but does often come at short notice and requires us to be in a really good position to actually put forward schemes which not only are our priorities, but also the priorities of the local communities and those sites that are getting greatest use, and we're addressing the greatest need first from that available budget. So where we've got these surveys undertaken, we can see the condition of that network, and we can really focus that in very short conversations and prioritization. Equally, on our longer programs, we can have those conversations so we can actually plan and progress schemes in a priority order, making sure that we can speak to all those who are affected, whether that's those providing us with data or those providing us with their actual experience of using the network locally. Here's a section where I have to make sure I don't fall into acronyms and technical talk. So the local asset capital program is something you'll be learning perhaps a bit more about in that asset management conversation as we go forward. But effectively, it's a program of capital works. So those which are perhaps resurfacing, drainage works, or footway works, or something similar, where we can demonstrate we're actually adding value to the network rather than maintaining what's already existing. So that would normally come under a revenue funded stream. So within that work, we would be speaking with the local communities. And as we developed the process initially, we saw it as a triangle of requirements to understand what the officer sees as being the network priorities, what they're hearing from the public, what the public's priorities are to the local parish and town councils, what's being used, what's affecting the public locally, and then the data that's produced to us by our asset management team, showing those machine surveys and rates of deterioration where we can get the best value from our investment. As the process has evolved, I think it's probably become more of a dodecahedron or something similar, where you bring in all sorts of data to add to that conversation, whether it's from claims or defect clusters and various other pieces of information, to make sure we're really focusing the money that is available to us in the right places where we're going to get the greatest value from that. Feeding work into other programs is really important to us. And again, we'll be using your feedback to us on where you see those priorities as being. Rob mentioned the various methods we have of undertaking surfacing works. You'll hear various things from your neighbourhood officers, including Elastomac, Dragon Patches, serviceability. They're all very different ways of techniques for undertaking works, but hopefully they're all giving us the same result at the end, which is a longer lasting, better quality finish, rather than just undertaking defect repairs and pothole repairs that perhaps don't last as long as we'd like them to. We can get better value from that work going forward. So feeding into those programs to make sure that the right priorities are being addressed first. We work with our cyclic teams, and in fact, John and myself lead on a performance improvement team for cyclic works. Those cyclic works would include things, the grass cutting program that's been undertaken at the moment on the verges, gully cleaning, rips, buttle holes and easements, cleaning those on a regular basis, undertaking that program work to make sure we're working as effectively as possible. And I think the key to that work is to work with agility and make sure that we have a policy to undertake to clear each of those assets, some of them on an annual basis, some 3 yearly, but we need to make sure is that we're addressing them in the right order, causing the minimum amount of impact, but maximum benefit from the works that are being undertaken. We mentioned earlier the vital link to local communities and parish clerks and county councillors. We have those conversations on a regular basis. We want to understand your feedback. We need to understand the work we are doing is best placed and is actually in the right direction. And that's why we're having meetings like we are today. And again, hopefully our highways officers are meeting with you on a fairly regular basis, keeping you informed of where our programs are being prioritised and focused in the future. And the final one on this slide is more of a thank you for the work that you're undertaking. It was mentioned earlier, the work with the community road wardens and the snow wardens. It's invaluable to us, it's greatly supported, and it's invaluable to your communities. And we recognise the need to, we talked about response times earlier, and I think it's really important that where you come to us with volunteers to support us delivering our highway duties, but providing more than that, we need to make sure we're responding quickly and providing the right level of support, because those volunteers, by their nature, if we don't provide the support to them or the feedback, they'll find something else equally valuable to be doing in another area of work, and that'll be a volunteer we've lost. So please do keep in contact with us if you do get those opportunities to provide that support and volunteering, and we'll absolutely try and provide that support to you at the earliest opportunity. Good, next slide, please. Okay.
I wanted to, at this point, I know we've just heard about the role of the Neighbourhood Highways Officers, and I'm sure there's going to be questions arising from this, but I just wanted to take a quick moment to gauge how well our members are aware and actually working with their highways officers at the moment. So I'm just going to quickly pause the screen and invite everyone to take part in a poll. So I'd like you to please, as best as you are able, describe how aware, describe your council's awareness and relationship with its Neighbourhood Highways Officers. So you should see, hopefully now on the screen, some questions popping up. I have got an option for don't know, for those of you who don't know. I'm just going to leave this up for 30 seconds and invite you to respond. And I'll share the results. So as you'll see, we've got a very mixed picture there about what people's relationships are with their neighbourhood officer. So I don't know if that comes as a surprise to my DCC colleagues at all or not, but yeah, and when we reflected earlier in my introduction how people felt, we knew some areas had good relationships and others different. So this is now confirming that for us. So thank you very much for sharing that. I've also got a second poll that I would like you to participate in. This time, bear with me, I want to know generally how your council goes about engaging with the Highways Department. So if you get you want to report an issue or seek assistance, how would your council usually go about doing that? Again, I've launched the question there. It should be popping up on your screens, and I'll leave that up for 30 seconds for everyone to respond. Sharing the results. Again, we've got a mixed range of responses again, but coming out top is people are contacting the Neighbourhood Highways Officers directly, so that's a really good sign. And we're also seeing good use of the online reporting tools, but a lot of people also looking to work through their county councillors as well, and hopefully we can tease through in our conversations later today why they're needing to use their county councillors. I suppose, are they using it to escalate things they've already raised, or are they using that as a first port of contact? So thank you to everyone for sharing those, and we'll share these poll results with you all again later as well. Thank you. So, so they were just the two polls. I think we are now back to you, John, are we? Not we?
Yes, thanks, Cara. Are you able to show our report a problem page? Are you able to share that?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a second. Okay. Yes.
That's great, thanks. So this is a view of our report problem page that I mentioned earlier. And on the slides, there's a QR code to show you how to get here. But also, if you type Devon report problem in the search page, it should take you onto this site. So
John,
it shows.
sorry to interrupt you, but you got quite a lot of background noise from those guys.
Yeah, sorry. I'm in the depot. It's pretty hard not to avoid it. Sorry, I'll try and speak as clearly as I can. Sorry about that. Sorry, I was just saying this is our report problem page. It shows the most common issues that are reported to us, and the order reflects seasonal priorities. So, for example, the overgrown vegetation is currently fairly high up on this because of spring growth that we're experiencing, and because of the mild winter and the warm wet spring that we've had. And in winter, ice and grit bins, we moved closer to the top of that list. Jeff asked earlier whether pavements included our maintenance, and pavements and trip hazards are also on our reported problem page. And in the background to this, when you report something on this, any issues are put straight through to the relevant team that can then try and resolve them. So this is the quickest way for people to put through anything that will then be directed to the relevant teams. For an example, if a pothole's reported here, it will go straight through to our contractor for assessment. So like I said earlier, you can see on here we've got potholes, parking, overgrown vegetation fairly high at the top because of the season. Trip hazards on footways and pavements are there as well, but it also covers a lot of the other things that we commonly see. So Cara, if you want to click on the pothole one, I can then take you through the process for reporting a pothole, and that's one of the most common ones. So when you click on that icon, it just takes you to a little bit, tells you about our policy and what we're looking for in terms of our defect requirements. So if you can scroll down to that and press start now, it'll take you to the start of the actual process. So we're very keen that people don't report potholes that have already been reported, because that creates issues with us. It means the gangs have to keep going out revisiting potholes that have already been reported. So first thing we ask you is, have you reported this pothole before? If you click on no, Cara, that'll take you through the next page. That's great, thanks. So also whether a pothole meets our defect criteria. So we're asking you then a general question roughly about the size of the pothole before you proceed. So if you can click, Carl, now it's wider than dinner plate, and then click next. That's great. And then about the depth of the pothole, we're just ask you a quick question about that. So if you click on yes, it does have a 14 millimeter, and then click on to the next one, that'd be really helpful. Thanks. And then a little bit, so we can assess our response time here a little bit, asking a question about where is the pothole. If you can click on just say in a tyre track, and then move on to the next one, that'd be helpful. And then a little bit again about duplicate reports, because we do get a lot of duplicate reports. So just to ask you there, has this been reported before? If it's already a duplicate, do you want to ask yourself? So if you click on, do you still want to report? If you click on yes, do you still want to report pothole? That'd be great. And then click on submit. That will take you through to our search page. So there's a little bit about our search page. If you scroll down and then click on continue, you should come to a map. And at the top there, you've got location search, so you can put in a postcode or a street name or a town name. Yeah, that's great. So put in wherever you want to go to, and you can then scroll in or out and accurately locate where the pothole is. So if you want to scroll in, pick a location, just that's it. So then you can then put on that map exactly where the pothole is. And then we're not going to do it now, because I don't want to create a pothole that our team would then react to, but you can then report a pothole here, and that'll then go through. Don't do that, Cara, because it will create one which will then cause us problems. But if you did do that, it would then create a report through to our team, who would then go out and assess it. So if you can click just across there, Cara, we won't proceed any further at the moment, because I don't want to create any confusion. But that's just a brief overview about how to report a pothole. That's probably got more pages than our other ones, but it's quite easy to report the other issues on that web page as well. If you go through, it's a similar type of process. Thanks very much. So, Cara, did you want to go back to the presentation again? And I think Tom's going to pick up on the next slide.
Thank you. This slide is somewhat shorter than I would have hoped for, to be honest. These are the things that we don't do, and I think this perhaps gives an appetite of what we actually do and quite a significant areas we cover. So there are a few things we don't actually get involved in significantly, and they're initially the district council function. So planning, we are a statutory consultee, and I think on the list at the beginning, there's a presentation in April 2025 to look forward to from our development management team, who'll be able to guide you through and give a bit better understanding of what our actual role is in the planning process and how we can contribute to that consultation process and perhaps influence decisions going forward. Whilst we don't do street cleansing, that's a district council function, so the general routine sweeping of streets and litter collection, we do get involved where there has been a build-up of silt on the road. As part of our works process, we will clean the road. We do undertake edge cleaning of the carriageway that John was mentioning earlier to make sure that the drainage is working to its maximum effect and we've got the full width of the road being used. And waste collection is, again, a district council function. National highways have a significant network going through Devon. They includes the M5, the A30, except the section through Yarcombe, the A35 and the A38 all come under the National Highways as part of their trunk road network. So we would recommend liaising directly with them if you've got any issues that need raising with them. And the police are the enforcement agency for a number of issues, particularly speed enforcement, obstruction on the highway, and mud on the road, again, would be a police enforcement matter. But I can fully understand with a number of those, you might want to come to your local highways officer for some advice on whether it does actually sit with them or with us, because there are some fine lines that need to be crossed at those locations, but we'll try and work with you and provide that support where we can. But there's also very good liaison between ourselves and the district to understand how we can work better together to deliver some of those functions, how we can coordinate our works, particularly around the litter collection, lining up with our verge cutting we're undertaking at the moment, making sure that our works coordinate with their works. And equally, National Highways, they obviously have to undertake works as well on their networks and have to have emergency diversions, unfortunately, at times. And that then affects our networks. We work very closely with them to make sure that we minimize the impact of those diversions when they're taking place. I'd like to move to the next slide. There are also a number of unitary authorities within and around the county. So Plymouth City Council and Torbay both have their own highway networks that they're responsible for. Again, we work very closely with them, particularly on functions like winter maintenance, where we can demonstrate efficiencies in actually crossing borders to make sure that we work as efficiently and effectively as possible, particularly at those critical times. And we work closely with them to understand their ways of working and our ways of working, to understand if there's more efficiencies that we can drive into our work and deliver more for less, and the same for themselves. And understand what innovations they're bringing in those areas, and we share ours with them equally. So we have regular conversations with the highway departments, but we're not actually responsible for the highway networks within those unitary authorities. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you, Tom and John. We've got lots of questions starting to file through into the chat. We will be pausing for some questions in a moment. Just a quick clarification, if I may, before we move to questions to the team. It's we've obviously talked about the role of the Neighbourhood Highways Officers, and we've seen the roles that the various team members perform. How does this relate to councillors? Because obviously you are operating to policies. Those policies are set by councillors. Some councils are choosing to engage with their county councillors on issues. Could you just confirm, when they should be coming to you, when they should be coming to a councillors, what you definitely can't deal with and what will have to be escalated to a committee or similar?
I think we're content for the parish either to come directly to ourselves or through the county councillor if they're most comfortable liaising in that way. But we will always keep our county councillors informed when we're responding to make sure that we're consistent with our messaging and they're equally informed on what is happening in the areas.
I think it varies, the relationship locally. Sometimes the county councillors are really keen to be the intermediary. In other cases, they're quite happy for the clerks to contact the NHO directly, but the NHO is always available if the clerk wants to raise an issue.
Okay, and what issues might a community raise which you would have to escalate to a committee or similar? Like you mentioned hattocks earlier, where they're approving capital spend, but there are other issues that would have to be escalated higher.
So typically speed limits are one issue that needs to go through our SCARF process, where we work closely with the police, and then setting a speed limit will be something that normally goes through our hattock. The annual weighting restrictions programs, that's where we're putting in extra WL lines. They typically go through our hattock as well. And if there are anything that the NHOs are set up to deal with, really maintenance type issues, so repairing things, fixing things. If a parish or town council wants to talk about traffic management in their parish, then that would probably have to go up to our traffic management team to look at. If there's a planning issue, then we might want to go through our development control team. But the NHO is very much the gateway into that process. So if you raise issues with the NHO, and then they can then pick them up with other teams.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like at this point just to launch another poll, sort of just to reflect. So everyone gave an indication of how they would contact the department before, but now having heard a little bit more, I want to see if that's influenced how you might engage with the department in future. So I'm just going to launch another poll just to see if that's changed anything. We can see we're now seeing very clearly that people are recognising that officers contacting the NHO directly is the better course of action, but people still feeling very confident to use the online reporting tools. And we've seen that using customer service centres or maybe working through the county councillors directors is appearing less effective now after hearing from you guys. So thank you, everybody. And again, we'll share those results with everyone after the session. So if everyone is agreeable, I think we should move on to questions now, as my chat feed is filling up rather promptly. So if you do have a question and it's not been raised in the chat already, can I please invite you to raise your hands now? And I'll try and get as many as we can. But I'm very keen that we have a breakout session as well. So I will restrain this to a few minutes, and anything we can't answer, we will pick up after the session. So I'm going to dive into the chat first and just say there's been a few queries about what's more effective, contacting the Neighbourhood Highways Officer directly or using the online reporting system, or does it make any difference at all?
I'm happy to take that one. If you, the online reporting tool goes directly to the correct team. It will give a reference number. It will give a response time in terms of the response, not necessarily to action anything on the ground, but to actually provide a response to the person reporting it. Going through emails and the like, there's a possibility the officer could be on leave or absent for any other reason. So in terms of the most appropriate way to report a known issue, I would suggest would be the online reporting tool.
Very clear instruction there. And someone's reflected, what if the thing they want to report doesn't fit nicely into one of those categories?
In that case, they can raise it with the NHO.
Okay.
If it's something that doesn't fit into that. I mean, I think, I can't remember how many categories there are on there. I think there's probably about 16 or so. They're the ones that are most commonly reported, but it's not, we don't have an icon on there for everything, I'm afraid.
Okay. And are you happy to be phoned on some of these issues? If someone's not comfortable using the online reporting system, or if there's somebody maybe has a visual impairment and finds those tools difficultly, are you happy to speak to people on the phone, not just via email?
Yes, and in those circumstances, we have the customer service centre as well that's available.
Okay, so again, very clear instruction there is if there is any issues with the online tools, go via the customer service centre to speak to someone directly.
Yeah, and we've got that number. We can give that out when you do the follow up with this after this meeting, Cara.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So you've mentioned earlier about not reporting the same pothole over and over. Now there seems to be a couple of comments in the chat here where clearly there are communities that are doing that, thinking it's going to have greater effect. Is there any message or something that the County Council could put out which might clarify that misunderstanding?
It's a bit like when you get to a pedestrian crossing and someone's already pressed a button and you think, I'll press it again because the green man will come up quicker. It doesn't make a difference if it's logged in the system. You know, we're already sending out a triage officer to go and look at it and get it logged for work to be done, go to our contractor. So yeah, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, and I think there's an ask there that could that be clarified somewhere in any of the communications, whether that's on the website or whether it's a separate communication that might be needed to go maybe to those areas where it's happening more frequently.
We can do. I think as we ran through that example that John did, it's all over that reporter problem page, but it won't make any difference. In fact, if anything, it will tie up resources.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe a takeaway for parish town councils, I suppose, if you're aware it's happening within your communities, maybe just reinforcing that message locally where it might help. So working through the questions, there's a couple questions here that are around how contractors are assigned and target times for repairs. I feel like they might be best suited for the asset management session, but would anyone like to answer those now, or should we?
Yeah, we can address them quickly now, but they will be as part of future events. So I can see in there somebody's asked about the target time for potholes. We operate a risk-based approach to potholes when they come in, and if they're actionable, so they can be within 2 hours, they can be within 90 days, and that's basically if there's a pothole that was, say, under a bench or somewhere like that, that's going to be very, very low risk, then that would probably fall into a category where it may be repaired within 28 days or 90 days. If we're on an A road that's really, really busy, or a B road that's really, really busy, and it's in the driving track where motorbikes may go, or cars or anything, that's something which may end up being a 2-hour response. So we have actually got highway safety policy, which we can share that with yourself, Cara, which you can send out to everybody, and that details everything that's in there, how we get to the assessment criteria, and it's something which we're going to discuss in one of the future sessions.
There's a similar question that's it's around just roads that are in really poor condition. You know, maybe they don't have potholes that meet quite the right criteria, but they're littered with other faults and stuff like that. How would they be logged? How would they be treated?
Okay, so again, all roads would be assessed in accordance with the highway safety policy. So if there was something actionable on there, then that would be repaired to meet our highway safety policy. As part of the discussions that towns and parish councils and councillors will have with the Neighbourhood Highway Officer, they can highlight those roads and say, actually, this is our interest in this road. This is one of our priorities that we want this put forward for a scheme. That will go into the mix with data that we've got, which shows which roads need to go first from asset data, from information from the Neighbourhood Highway Officer, the county councillor input, and then that will obviously come in with yourselves, with the towns and parish councils. There is a set amount of money that's allocated through the LACP, so Local Asset Capital Programme, that Tom and John's team look after. So it would be added to the list. And on that list, it just depends where that priority fits. And there's only so much money to do so many. Obviously, if it complies with our highway safety policy, it's obviously we understand that it looks in bad condition and it's in there, but if it complies with the policy, it's likely to be lower down the list on there. But going through that process, through the LACP process with your Neighbourhood Highway Officer, is the way to go.
And sort of building on that a little bit more, there was a query here that's just reflecting about areas that might have disproportionate dangers or disadvantages for people with protected characteristics. So maybe somebody who's visually impaired, and things around pedestrian crossings and zebra crossings and things like that. I haven't gone into the full detail of the query, but again, I'm guessing those policies, whilst there isn't a one size fit all, is there, I suppose, discretion to allow for where there might be more risk depending on where conditions are and users in that area, perhaps.
Yeah, I saw that comment, Cara. Yeah, I think we go back to that safety policy, which is available on our website, where we can provide a link to it after the meeting. But that really lays down the approach and tries to give that consistency of approach. That is a policy that's been through our cabinet process, and part of that there should have been an impact needs assessment that would have supported that. So whilst that is, we look also for consistency across other counties, and what you could be doing differently. That's the policy that DCC as an authority has chosen, not us as a service, not us as officers, but that's what we follow. I saw there was a comment there about our triage officers. You know, our triage officers, they are trained highway safety inspectors. I'm deputy director, but I can't go out and do safety inspections because I haven't had the training that they've had, with very, very specific training. So we trust them and their judgment when it comes to making these difficult decisions.
Thank you. I can see John's had his hand up for a little while. So John Dean, would you like to ask your questions while I skim the rest of the questions in the chat?
Yes, thank you very much, Cara. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
I'm John Dean. I'm a parish councillor in Newton St Sires. And we have a very active road warden scheme in Newton St Sides. We've got a very active community speed watch team, flood resilience team, and so on. So we're pretty self-sufficient in many areas. But we sit on the A377, which is the main road from Exeter to Barnstaple. As a consequence of that, our communities are often split by the main road, and we're trying to engage with the council to discuss ways that we might match this. And so far, I'm afraid to say that we've been completely frustrated, or I have anyway. I'm not getting a response to emails, to texts, to voice messages, and we really just simply want to engage with the county council to discuss ways in which we can help the communities to cross a road, across a main road. One of the regions is in the has a zone of the road which is in the national speed limit, 60 miles an hour. So it's very dangerous for people, old people, people with children, to cross the road there. And I'm struggling really to engage with the council on this one. Am I in a unique position, or is this something that is encountered by other people? I'd be pleased to know.
I'm happy to respond on that, and I'm slightly disappointed that you're getting that impression of the way Newton St Sides is being treated. I've attended parish meetings there myself, and regularly the county councillor and district councillors have met there and discussed those issues. Some of the things being looked at are significantly more than perhaps the highway maintenance we're talking about here today, so perhaps better taken offline, but more than happy to pursue that again with yourselves to make sure that we actually get those lines of communication in place and working better.
Okay, I'm just mindful, I really want to do some breakout rooms, and I can see there's lots more questions in the chat, but I'm going to pause the questions just for a moment. We will ensure anyone who's asked a question, we will get an answer to you after the session. So I just want to pause for breakout rooms, if you'll allow me at this point. Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen again, just so you can see what questions I would like you to all discuss. Okay, so the aims of our breakout session are very much about wanting to enable you, parish and town councils here today, to network with fellow councils, to share your experiences of working with the Highways Department, with your neighbourhood highways officers, but also to reflect on what you can do to help enhance the relationships, what you need highways to do to enhance the relationships, and provide some constructive feedback and suggestions for how we can improve things moving forward. So I'm going to put you all into breakout rooms of about 4 or 5 of you, and allow you 15 minutes. And what I'd ask you to consider these 3 discussion points. So it's, what's your experience working with them now, the positives, negatives, what works, what doesn't work, what are the challenges that you're facing, where can communication and collaboration be improved, and are there any core principles that you would like to identify which will help enhance the relationship, and what do you or the highways team need to do? So I'm going to pop you all into groups now. So I hope everyone appreciated the opportunity to chat with other councils about this. I'm sorry I could not give you a longer time, and if we're all keen to do this again, we'll definitely have to schedule another session just for you all to chat to each other and compare notes. But I hope it was a good opportunity to reflect on how things are currently, how we want them to be in future, and the things that we can all do to help improve relationships, particularly when it comes to working with our neighbourhood highways officers, who are clearly a crucial point of contact for helping us to navigate the highways team, but also to troubleshoot and figure out how to best direct things as well. So because there was about 20 groups broken up, because I wanted to make them small so you all had a chance to speak, I'm only going to get a bit of feedback from a couple of you, because what I am going to be doing is sending you a feedback form where you can type in your own notes about things that you've covered, which we can then give us a fuller assessment of what people are thinking and feeling, and help influence our future events. So I'm going to just offer it to volunteer now. Anyone who wants to share some of the thoughts that came out of their group discussions? Any volunteers? Peter O'Neill, thank you for you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, just 2 points from ours. One was that we feel that the county council need to be more open about what they can afford to do. We're sort of seeing that resources, finance resources and staff resources are a big part of the problem. And therefore it creates frustration, because here's all the things we might expect to be done, but a lot of them can't be done, we're told, because of resources. It would be better to say, here's the things we can do, here's the things we can't do. And I know that's not always easy to do. And the other thing that came up was that we're really starting to think that through the back door, we're using our precept for Devon County Council responsibilities. So we did in the group suggest that we could specifically name a project like a zebra crossing and say, well, give us 20,000 on the precept for that purpose for that 1 year, and we will get it done.
And I think, you know, a lot of the questions you have around investment, I think hopefully, you know, resource generally, the answers to those questions are going to come through with the events that we've got planned. We knew these were going to be big topics, and particularly that one about the zebra crossing, you know, in the self-help session that we've got coming up in August, that's very much focused on what councils can do for themselves when resources are so clearly a challenge and we can't deliver everything everywhere all at once, sort of thing. So please do come along to those next sessions, and thank you for your feedback. Rachel, would you like to share feedback from your group? You'll need to unmute.
Cardinal sin. It's really interesting having officers and councillors in the same breakout room. We got a lot of computer says no, you know, you kind of put something in and it's just a no all of the time. I'm going to say the same thing that I say every time I'm in these meetings. Open communication is so important. I have a really positive relationship with my NHO. He's really good, but his hands are entirely tied. He can only do so much with the budget that he has. And I do recognise that. So kind of it's great when you've got county councillors who want to be involved, but there just needs to be stronger communication. And for example, policy making is really important. When Devon County Council are going to change a policy, why can't that be communicated to us, and why can't we have a say? Because it really does affect us, and it goes back to what Peter was just saying about how town and parish councils are just picking up the tab on things that aren't being done by DCC anymore, and that's just not a sustainable model for any of us.
Thank you, Rachel. Sounds like there's been some really interesting chats happening in your group. And I know conversations around policy change is definitely something that I've chatted with Ian about in the past, and how we can be more open and upfront about things in the forward plan and stuff like that as well. So I'm sure those conversations are going to continue even more so after the feedback that we capture from everyone today. I'll take one more now, but I'm very mindful it's 2 o'clock. Alice, would you like to share what came out in your group?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, Cara. Just sort of following on from what Rachel said about communication and picking up on what was said when the slides were going through earlier. Something that probably DCC might want to take on board sort of in-house is to go back to their own councillors. Something that we found in parish council meetings is Devon County councillors saying, well, when you report potholes on the system, on the site, sort of get people to keep reporting the same potholes because it pushes it further and further up the system. So that's the feedback we're getting from our county councillors. So it might be something to feed back to your county councillors, because that's what they're telling us at town and parish level. So it's sort of just making sure everybody's on the same hymn sheet, because that's the advice we're getting from Devon County councillors. So that's what we're taking on as that's what we should be doing, and what we're then passing on to the public.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. We were actually discussing this while everyone was in their breakout rooms. Rob, would you like to respond to that one?
I think that's really interesting. I think that's something I can pick up, particularly with Stuart Hughes as a cabinet member, and the briefings that he puts out to all members, just to remind them what the kind of things that we've discussed today.
Yeah. Thanks. Now, I would really love to be hearing more about what everyone else was discussing in their groups, but time is a factor here. So what I have done in the chat, you'll see a link to a feedback form. So it will ask some general questions about how effective you found today's sessions, but there are questions in there in section 2, which is specifically asking you to capture what you've discussed in your group. So what are the challenges that you're experiencing? What's working well? What's not working so well? And I've got another list here of all the questions on, and I've forgotten them all now. but also, you know, what would make a difference, and what are the principles that you think are really important for helping you to enhance your relationship with the department. So please, please, please do not leave without hitting that link. I will email with you the link after the session as well, because your feedback will help shape the events that we've got planned, will help us identify other events that we need to hold, and will continue to influence the conversations we're having with the department. There's so many questions that we haven't been able to answer today, but I am committing here and now that I will be sending these questions to the officers here today, and we will get responses back to all of you. And again, I'll reiterate that this session has been recorded, and the presentation slides will also be shared with you, and they will probably appear in a weekly bulletin when they're all ready. But as we've reached just past 2 o'clock, can I please just say huge thank you for everyone for being here today, for taking the time to want to better understand how the department functions, and for wanting to see the relationships improve. Thank you again to all the officers who've given up their time as well today, and for their commitment also for wanting to work effectively with you all. Is there anything, any final words from our officers?
Cara, can I just thank you and DALC on behalf of the service for helping us to get this established. I think this is exactly what we've been missing, and you know, you've got the full commitment of the service to make this a success. And thank you for everyone that's given up their time to join us today. I don't think we'll get it right first time, but we'll listen to the feedback, and we'll try to shape that as we go into the future presentations.
Thanks, Rob. And yeah, I can't reiterate strongly enough how much we are actively listening to what you have to say. You know, we will look at the questions, we'll look at your feedback, and we will make sure future sessions suit and meet your needs. So for now then, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us. Don't leave without taking that link for that feedback form, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.